Hello there, yes, you, the analysting words. Asterisk, before we embark on our journey, I want you to do something for me. It's quite simple, I promise. Just for a moment, I want you to stop. Stop everything you're doing, close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and listen. What do you hear? Perhaps you're nestled in a quiet room, the gentle hum of your computer, the only sound piercing the stillness. Maybe the rhythmic ticking of a clock marks the passage of time. Or perhaps you're in a bustling cafe, the clatter of cups, the murmur of conversations, and the hiss of an espresso machine creating a symphony of urban life. You could be outdoors, the rustling of leaves in the wind, the distant chirping of a bird, the rumble of a passing car, all painting a sonic landscape. Take a deep breath. Now, focus on the most subtle sound you can perceive, the soft whisper of your own breath, the faint thumping of your heart. And what if you hear nothing? An almost impossible feat in our modern world. But perhaps you're in a place of profound quiet. What does that silence feel like? Is it peaceful, or is it unsettling? Does your brain, in the absence of external noise, start to create its own soundtrack? Wherever you are, whatever you're hearing or not hearing, you are currently immersed in the central theme of our story, the incredible, invisible world of sound. It's a world of waves and vibrations, of energy and perception, a world that shapes our reality in ways we often take for granted. So, get comfortable, settle in. We're about to embark on an epic journey, a slow, meandering exploration into the very essence of what it means to hear. We'll travel from the frantic dance of a tiny molecule to the vast, silent expanse of space. We'll uncover the secrets of how a simple vibration can evoke our deepest emotions, from the joy of a beautiful melody to the fear triggered by a sudden, jarring noise. This isn't going to be a stuffy, boring lecture. Think of it more as a conversation, a shared exploration. We'll laugh, we'll ponder, and we'll most certainly marvel at the intricate science behind it all. We'll take our time, just like a gentle sound wave making its way through the air. Are you ready? Good. Let's begin our story. Sound waves and silence, the science of sound. And it all starts with a simple, almost childlike question. What is sound? To answer that, we need to zoom in. Way in, down past what our eyes can see, past the capabilities of even the most powerful microscopes. We need to enter the realm of the invisible, the world of atoms and molecules. Imagine the air all around you. It might seem like empty space, but it's actually a bustling metropolis of tiny particles. Billions upon billions of nitrogen, oxygen, and other molecules are whizzing around. It's a simple action, one you've done countless times, but in that fraction of a second, you've become a creator. You've brought a sound into existence. Here's how. When your hands come together, they rapidly push the air molecules in front of them. Imagine a perfectly ordered queue of people, and suddenly, someone at the back shoves the person in front of them. That person stumbles forward, bumping into the next, and so on, creating a ripple of movement down the line. This is exactly what happens with the air molecules. Your clapping hands create a small area of high pressure, a region where the molecules are momentarily squeezed together or compressed. But nature loves balance. These compressed molecules immediately want to spread out again. As they do, they leave behind a region of lower pressure, a space where the molecules are more spread out. This is called a rarefaction. This process doesn't just happen once and then stop. The compressed molecules, as they spring back, push on the next layer of molecules, compressing them. And those molecules, in turn, spring back, creating a behind them and compressing the layer in front. And so, a chain reaction is born. A wave of alternating compressions and rarefactions starts to travel outwards from your hands, spreading in all directions like the ripples on a pond when you toss in a stone. This traveling wave of pressure is what we call a sound wave. It's a crucial point to understand. The individual air molecules themselves don't travel all the way from your hands to your ears. If they did, a simple conversation would create a hurricane-force wind. Instead, each molecule just nudges its neighbor, transferring energy from one to the next. Think of a stadium wave or a Mexican wave. The people in the stands don't run around the stadium. Let's add a little more scientific rigor to our story, but let's keep it fun. Imagine our sound wave is a character in a play. This character has some defining traits, some key characteristics that determine what kind of sound it will be. Our first characteristic is frequency. Frequency, in simple terms, is how fast the vibrations are happening. It's the number of complete back and forth cycles of compression and rarefaction that occur in a single second. We measure frequency in a unit called Hertz, Hz, named after the brilliant German physicist Heinrich Hertz, who proved the existence of electromagnetic waves. So, a sound with a frequency of 100 Hz means that 100 of these compression rarefaction waves are passing a given point every second. Now, how does frequency relate to what we actually hear? It determines the pitch of the sound. A low-frequency sound wave, with its slow, lazy vibrations, is perceived by our ears as a low-pitched sound. Think of the deep rumble of thunder, the low throb of a bass guitar, or the resonant voice of a baritone singer. A high-frequency sound wave, with its rapid, frantic vibrations, is perceived as a high-pitched sound. Think of the chirping of a cricket, the piercing squeal of a whistle. A healthy young person can typically hear frequencies from about 20 Hz all the way up to 20,000 Hz or 20 kHz, KHZ. To put that in perspective, the lowest note on a grand piano has a frequency of around 27.5 Hz. The highest note is just over 4,000 Hz, the whine of a mosquito. That incredibly annoying sound that seems to drill right into your brain can have a frequency of over 15,000 GE. As we get older, our ability to hear high-frequency sounds tends to diminish. This is a natural part of the aging process, and it's why your parents might not be able to hear that faint, high-pitched ringing from an old television set that you can. But the world of sound extends far beyond the limits of our own hearing. Sounds with frequencies below our hearing range, below 20 Hz, are called infrasound. These are the deep, rumbling giants of the sound world. We might not be able to hear them, but we can sometimes feel them as a vibration in our chest. Elephants are masters of infrasound, using these low-frequency calls to communicate over vast distances. The sound waves can travel through the ground, allowing them to hear with their feet. Volcanoes, earthquakes, and even large waterfalls also produce powerful infrasound. Asterisk, on the other end of the spectrum, we have ultrasound. These are sounds with frequencies above our hearing range, above 20,000 hertz. While we are deaf to these high-pitched sounds, many animals are not. Dogs can hear up to about 45,000 hertz, which is why a silent dog whistle, which produces a high-frequency sound, is anything but silent to them. Cats can hear even higher, up to around 64,000 hertz, but the true champions of ultrasound are bats and dolphins. They use a remarkable ability called echolocation. They emit high-frequency clicks and chirps, and then listen for the echoes that bounce back from objects in their environment. By interpreting these echoes, they can build a detailed sound map of their surroundings, allowing them to navigate and hunt in complete darkness. We'll dive deeper into the fascinating world of echolocation later in our story. So, our sound wave character now has a pitch determined by its frequency. But what about its loudness? How do we describe the difference between a gentle whisper and a deafening rock concert? This brings us to our second key characteristic: amplitude. If frequency is how fast the wave is vibrating, amplitude is how big the wave is. Let's go back to our analogy of the clapping hands. A gentle clap will only displace the air molecules a small amount. The areas of compression will be only slightly more dense than the surrounding air, and the areas of rarefaction will be only slightly less dense. This creates a sound wave with a small amplitude. A powerful, enthusiastic clap, on the other hand, will push the air molecules with much more force. The compressions will be much denser, and the rarefactions much less dense. This creates a sound wave with a large amplitude. The amplitude of a sound wave determines its intensity, or what we perceive as its loudness. A small amplitude wave carries a small amount of energy and is perceived as a quiet sound. A large amplitude wave carries a large amount of energy and is perceived as a loud sound. It's a direct relationship: more energy, bigger amplitude, louder sound. Now, you might think we would measure loudness in a simple, linear way. For example, a sound that is twice as loud has twice the amplitude. But our ears don't work like that. Our hearing system is incredibly sensitive, capable of detecting a vast range of sound intensities, from the faintest whisper to the roar of a jet engine. To handle this enormous range, we use a logarithmic scale called the decibel scale. It's named after Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone. The decibel scale is a bit tricky at first, but it's actually a very clever way of representing loudness. On a logarithmic scale, a small increase in the decibel number corresponds to a huge increase in the actual sound intensity. Let's try to make this a little more intuitive. The faintest sound a human can hear is defined as 0 decibels. This is the threshold of our hearing. A quiet whisper is around 30 decibels. A normal conversation is about 60 decibels. Now, here's where the logarithmic nature comes in. A sound that is 10 decibels higher is actually 10 times more intense. So, a 70 decibels sound like a vacuum cleaner is 10 times more intense than a 60 decibels conversation. And 80 decibels sound like a garbage disposal is 100 times more intense than that 60 decibels conversation. This is why prolonged exposure to sounds above 85 decibels can start to cause permanent hearing damage. A rock concert, which can reach levels of 120 decibels or more, is an astounding 1 trillion times more intense than the faintest sound we can hear. A jet engine at close range, at around 140 decibels, can cause immediate and severe pain and damage to our ears. The decibel scale is a powerful tool for understanding and managing the loudness of sounds in our environment. From the gentle rustle of leaves at 20 dB to the potentially harmful noise of a busy city street. So now our sound wave character has a pitch frequency and a loudness amplitude, but there's one more important characteristic we need to consider: its speed. How fast does sound travel? This is a question that has intrigued scientists and thinkers for centuries. For a long time, it was thought that the speed of sound was instantaneous. When you see a distant event, like a lightning strike, and hear the thunder a few moments later, it's not immediately obvious that the sound has taken time to travel to you. One of the first recorded attempts to measure the speed of sound was in the 17th century by the French mathematician Marin Mersenne. He had his friend, the philosopher Pierre Gassendi, fire a cannon from a known distance. Mersenne used a pendulum to time the delay between seeing the flash of the cannon and hearing the boom. His calculations were remarkably close to the actual value. The speed of sound is not a universal constant like the speed of light. It depends on the medium through which it is traveling. What do I mean by medium? The medium is the substance, the collection of molecules that is vibrating and carrying the sound wave. For us, the most common medium is, of course, the air. The speed of sound in air at sea level and at a temperature of 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, is approximately 343 meters per second, about 1,125 feet per second, or 767 miles per hour. But here's the interesting part. The properties of the medium have a big impact on how fast sound can travel. There are two main factors to consider: the density and the elasticity of the medium. Let's think about density first. You might intuitively think that sound would travel faster in a less dense medium, like air, because there's less stuff to get in the way, but it's actually the opposite. Sound generally travels slower in less dense mediums and faster in denser mediums. Now, let's consider elasticity. Elasticity refers to how quickly a material can return to its original shape after being deformed. Think of a rubber band. It's very elastic. You stretch it, and it snaps back quickly. A lump of clay, on the other hand, is not very elastic. You deform it, and it stays deformed. Sound travels faster in more elastic materials. This is because the molecules in an elastic material are more tightly bound together and can transfer vibrations more efficiently. So, let's put these two factors together. How does the speed of sound compare in different mediums? We already know the speed of sound in air, a gas. What about in liquids and solids? Liquids are much denser than gases, and they are also not very compressible, which makes them quite elastic. As a result, sound travels much faster in water than it does in air. The speed of sound in fresh water is about 1,482 meters per second, more than 4 times faster than in air. This is why whales and dolphins can communicate over such vast distances in the ocean. Solids are even denser and more elastic than liquids. So, you can probably guess what that means for the speed of sound. Sound travels incredibly fast through solids. In steel, for example, the The speed of sound is a whopping 5,960 meters per second, about 17 times faster than in air. This is why you can hear a distant train approaching by putting your ear to the railway track long before you can hear it through the air. The sound waves travel much more efficiently and quickly through the solid steel of the track. Temperature also has a significant effect on the speed of sound, particularly in gases. As you heat a gas, its molecules move around more rapidly and collide more often. This allows them to transfer vibrations more quickly. So, the hotter the air, the faster the speed of sound. For every 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature, the speed of sound in air increases by about 0.6 meters per second. So, to recap, our sound wave, this traveling disturbance of energy, is defined by its frequency pitch, its amplitude, loudness, and the speed at which it travels, which depends on the medium it's passing through. But what happens when our sound wave encounters something, an obstacle, a change in the medium? This is where the story gets even more interesting. Sound waves don't just travel in a straight line forever. They can be reflected, refracted, and diffracted. Let's start with reflection. Reflection is what happens when a sound wave hits a surface and bounces off. You're already very familiar with a common example of sound reflection, an echo. Imagine you're standing in a large, empty room or at the edge of a canyon. You shout hello, and a few moments later, you hear a faint hello coming back at you. That's an echo. Your sound wave traveled through the air, hit a distant surface like a wall or a cliff face, and bounced back to your ears. For us to perceive a distinct echo, the reflected sound must reach our ears at least 0.1 seconds after the original sound. Our brains need this slight delay to distinguish the two sounds. Since we know the speed of sound in air is about 343 meters per second, we can calculate the minimum distance to a reflecting surface to hear an echo. In that 0.1 seconds, the sound wave has to travel to the surface and back, so it covers twice the distance. Smooth surfaces are excellent reflectors of sound. This is why you get such great echoes in places with large, flat walls, like gymnasiums or tunnels. Soft, porous surfaces, on the other hand, are poor reflectors. They tend to absorb the sound energy. Think of thick carpets, heavy curtains, or specially designed acoustic foam. These materials are used in recording studios and concert halls to control unwanted reflections and create a clearer, more pleasant sound. This phenomenon is called acoustic absorption. Sometimes, instead of a single, clear echo, you get a jumble of multiple reflections that arrive at your ears so close together that you can't distinguish them. This is called reverberation. Reverberation is what gives a room its characteristic sound. A room with a lot of hard, reflective surfaces, like a tiled bathroom, will have a long reverberation time. This is why singing in the shower sounds so good. The multiple reflections of your voice blend together, making it sound fuller and more sustained. A room with a lot of soft, absorbent surfaces, like a heavily furnished living room, will have a short reverberation time. The sound will be drier and more intimate. Architects and acousticians pay very close attention to reverberation when they design spaces like concert halls and theaters. They carefully choose the materials and shapes of the walls and ceilings to create the perfect reverberation time for the intended use of the space. For a symphony orchestra, a longer reverberation time is often desired to blend the sounds of the instruments together. For a lecture hall, a shorter reverberation time is better to ensure that the speaker's words are clear and intelligible. Now, what about refraction? Refraction is the bending of a wave as it passes from one medium to another, or as it moves through a medium with changing properties. You're probably familiar with the refraction of light. If you put a straw in a glass of water, it looks bent at the surface. This is because the light waves slow down as they enter the denser medium of the water, causing them to change direction. Sound waves can be refracted too. A common example of sound refraction happens in the atmosphere. On a clear, calm evening, sound can seem to travel much further than it does during the day. This is because of a temperature inversion. Normally, the air is warmer near the ground and gets cooler as you go up in altitude. But on a clear night, the ground cools down rapidly, making the air near the surface cooler than the air above it. When a sound wave travels through this temperature inversion, the part of the wave in the warmer, higher air travels faster than the part of the wave in the cooler, lower air. This causes the sound wave to bend or refract back down towards the ground. This can allow you to hear sounds from a much greater distance than you normally would. The opposite effect happens during the day. The ground is warmer, so the air near the surface is warmer than the air above. This causes sound waves to refract upwards, away from the ground, making it harder to hear distant sounds. Finally, we have diffraction. Diffraction is the ability of a wave to bend around obstacles or spread out as it passes through an opening. Imagine you're in a room with a door that is slightly ajar. Someone is talking in the next room. You can't see them, but you can hear them. How is this possible? If sound waves only traveled in straight lines, you wouldn't be able to hear the person unless you were directly in line with the opening of the door. But because of diffraction, the sound waves that pass through the doorway spread out, filling the entire room. The amount of diffraction depends on the wavelength of the sound and the size of the obstacle or opening. Lower frequency sounds have longer wavelengths, and they diffract more easily than high frequency sounds, which have shorter wavelengths. This is why you can often hear the low frequency bass sounds from a neighbor's stereo through the walls, even when you can't make out the higher frequency melody or vocals. The longer wavelengths of the bass notes are better at bending around the obstacles in their path. So, our sound wave is a pretty dynamic character, isn't it? It can bounce off surfaces, bend as it changes mediums, and even squeeze around corners. But, so far, we've only talked about what sound is and how it travels. We haven't yet explored the most magical part of the story, how we actually hear it. The journey of a sound wave from the outside world into our conscious perception is an incredible feat of biological engineering. It's a journey that takes us deep inside the intricate and delicate structure of the human ear. So, let's take a closer look at this remarkable organ. The ear is divided into three main sections: the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. Each section plays a crucial role in capturing, amplifying, and converting sound waves into electrical signals that our brain can understand. The part of the ear that you can see, the fleshy flap on the side of your head, is called the pinna or the auricle. Its funnel-like shape is not just for decoration. It's designed to collect sound waves from the environment and channel them into the ear canal. The pinna also plays a subtle but important role in helping us determine the direction of a sound. The folds and ridges of the pinna reflect sound waves in slightly different ways depending on whether the sound is coming from in front of you, behind you, above you, or below you. Our brain learns to interpret these subtle differences, giving us a sense of the vertical location of a sound source. Once the sound waves are collected by the pinna, they travel down the ear canal, a tube that is about 2.5 centimeters long. At the end of the ear canal, they encounter a thin, taut membrane called the eardrum, or the tympanic membrane. The eardrum is like the head of a tiny drum. When the compressions and rarefactions of the sound wave hit the eardrum, they cause it to vibrate. The eardrum is incredibly sensitive. It can detect vibrations that are smaller than the diameter of a single atom. The eardrum marks the boundary between the outer ear and the middle ear. The middle ear is a small, air-filled cavity that houses 3 of the smallest bones in the human body. These bones are collectively known as the ossicles, and they have wonderfully descriptive names: the malleus hammer, the incus anvil, and the stapes stirrup. The ossicles form a mechanical linkage, a tiny chain of levers that connects the eardrum to the inner ear. The malleus is attached to the eardrum, so when the eardrum vibrates, the malleus vibrates with it. The malleus then transfers these vibrations to the incus, which in turn transfers them to the stapes. The main function of the ossicles is to amplify the sound vibrations. The eardrum is much larger than the footplate of the stapes, the part that connects to the inner ear. This difference in size, combined with the lever action of the ossicles, results in a significant increase in the pressure of the vibrations. This amplification is necessary because the inner ear is filled with fluid, and it takes more energy to move a fluid than it does to move air. The middle ear acts as an impedance matching device, ensuring that the maximum amount of sound energy is transferred from the air-filled outer ear to the fluid-filled inner ear. The middle ear also has a clever way of protecting the inner ear from loud noises. 2 tiny muscles, the tensor tympani and the stapedius, can contract to stiffen the ossicular chain. This reduces the amount of vibration that is transmitted to the inner ear. This is called the acoustic reflex, and it's an involuntary response that helps to dampen the sound of our own chewing and speaking, as well as protecting us from sudden, loud external sounds. However, the reflex isn't instantaneous, so it doesn't offer much protection from very sudden, explosive noises. The middle ear is also connected to the back of the throat by a small tube called the Eustachian tube. The Eustachian tube is normally closed, but it opens when we swallow, yawn, or chew. Its job is to equalize the air pressure on both sides of the eardrum. You've probably experienced the effects of the Eustachian tube when you've been in an airplane that is taking off or landing. The change in altitude causes a pressure difference between the middle ear and the outside air, which can make your ears feel blocked or popped. Swallowing or yawning helps to open the Eustachian tube and allow the pressure to equalize, relieving the discomfort. Now, we come to the most complex and fascinating part of the ear, the inner ear. The inner ear is a maze of fluid-filled chambers and canals nestled deep within the temporal bone of the skull. It has 2 main parts: the vestibular system, which is responsible for our sense of balance, and the cochlea, which is the organ of hearing. The cochlea is a spiral-shaped, bony structure that looks like a tiny snail shell. If you were to unroll the cochlea, it would be a tube about 3.5 centimeters long. The cochlea is divided into 3 fluid-filled canals that run along its length. The stapes, the last of the 3 middle ear bones, fits into a small opening in the cochlea called the oval window. When the stapes vibrates, it pushes and pulls on the fluid in the cockle, creating pressure waves that travel through the canals. Now, here's where the real magic happens. Running down the center of the cochlea is a flexible membrane called the basilar membrane. On top of the basilar membrane sits the organ of Corti, the true sensory organ of hearing. The organ of Corti contains thousands of tiny, delicate hair cells. These are not like the hair on your head. They are specialized sensory cells that have a bundle of microscopic, hair-like projections called stereocilia at their top. Asterisk. There are 2 types of hair cells, inner hair cells and outer hair cells. The inner hair cells are the primary sensory receptors for hearing. The outer hair cells play a more active role, acting as a kind of biological amplifier. As the pressure waves travel through the fluid in the cochlea, they cause the basilar membrane to vibrate. The basilar membrane is not uniform along its length. It is wider and more flexible at the apex, the tip of the spiral, and narrower and stiffer at the base, near the oval window. This difference in mechanical properties means that different parts of the basilar membrane vibrate in response to different frequencies of sound. High-frequency sounds cause the stiff base of the basilar membrane to vibrate, while low-frequency sounds cause the flexible apex to vibrate. This is called the place theory of hearing. The cochlea acts like a frequency analyzer, or a prism for sound, separating complex sounds into their individual frequency components. When a particular section of the basilar membrane vibrates, it causes the stereocilia of the hair cells in that region to bend. This bending opens up tiny channels in the hair cells, allowing positively charged ions to rush in. This influx of ions creates an electrical signal, a process called transduction. This is the crucial moment of conversion. The mechanical energy of the sound wave has now been transformed into the electrical energy of a nerve impulse. The inner hair cells are the ones that are primarily responsible for this transduction. When they are stimulated, they release neurotransmitters that trigger an electrical signal in the auditory nerve. The outer hair cells have a more remarkable function. When they are stimulated, they can actually change their length, elongating and contracting in response to the sound vibrations. This motile response acts as a cochlear amplifier, sharpening the tuning of the basilar membrane and amplifying the vibrations of low-level sounds. This is what gives our hearing its incredible sensitivity and frequency selectivity. The electrical signals from the hair cells are carried by the auditory nerve to the brain. The auditory nerve contains about 30,000 nerve fibers, each one carrying information about a specific frequency of sound. The journey of the sound signal doesn't end at the auditory nerve. From there, it travels through a complex series of relay stations in the brainstem, where the information from both ears is combined and processed. This processing helps us to localize sounds in space, to separate a single voice from a noisy background, and to recognize complex patterns like speech and music. The final destination for the auditory signal is the auditory cortex, located in the temporal lobe of the brain. It is here, in the intricate neural circuits of the auditory cortex, that the electrical signals are finally interpreted and perceived as sound. It is here that a simple vibration in the air becomes the experience of a beautiful melody, the meaning of a spoken word, or the warning of an approaching danger. It's an astonishingly complex and elegant process, a symphony of physics, biology, and neurology that all happens in a fraction of a second, every time we hear a sound. But what about the other side of our story? What about silence? We often think of silence as the complete absence of sound. But is true silence really achievable, even in the quietest place you can imagine? A place far away from the hustle and bustle of human activity, there is still sound. The gentle rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the buzzing of an insect. To experience something close to true silence, you would need to enter an anechoic chamber. An anechoic chamber, which literally means no echo chamber, is a room that is specially designed to absorb all sound waves. The walls, ceiling, and floor are covered with large, wedge-shaped pieces of sound-absorbing material. Stepping into an anechoic chamber is a bizarre and often unsettling experience. The familiar background noise of the world disappears completely. There is no reverberation, no echo. The sound of your own voice is flat and dead in the profound quiet of an anechoic chamber. You start to hear sounds that are normally masked by the noise of the outside world. You can hear the thumping of your own heart, the gurgling of your stomach, the faint whistling of your breath. Some people have even reported hearing the sound of their own nervous system, a faint, high-pitched ringing. For some, the experience of an anechoic chamber is peaceful and meditative. For others, it can be deeply disorienting and even frightening. The longest anyone has ever been able to stay in an anechoic chamber is just under an hour. After that, the sensory deprivation can lead to hallucinations. Our brains are so accustomed to a constant stream of auditory information that when it is taken away, they can start to create their own sounds. So, even in the most silent place on earth, we are never truly in silence. We carry the sounds of our own bodies with us wherever we go. But the concept of silence is not just about the absence of physical sound waves. It also has a powerful psychological and emotional dimension. Silence can be a source of great comfort and peace. In a world that is increasingly filled with noise, moments of quiet can be a precious opportunity for reflection, contemplation, and creativity. Many people find that they can think more clearly and concentrate better in a quiet environment. But silence can also be uncomfortable, even threatening. A sudden, unexpected silence can be a sign of danger. The silence of a stalled engine on a lonely road, the eerie quiet after a loud explosion. The silent treatment is a form of passive-aggressive punishment, where one person withholds communication from another. The silence in a relationship can be more deafening and more painful than any angry words. And then there is the profound, eternal silence of space. For a long time, science fiction movies have filled the vacuum of space with the roar of explosions and the whoosh of passing starships. But in reality, space is almost completely silent. Remember our earlier discussion. Sound needs a medium to travel. It needs a collection of molecules to vibrate and carry the energy of the sound wave. The vast expanse of space is a near-perfect vacuum. There are simply not enough atoms and molecules for sound waves to propagate. So, if you were an astronaut floating in space and a nearby spaceship exploded, you wouldn't hear a thing. You would see a brilliant flash of light, but the cataclysmic event would unfold in eerie silence. Now, that's not to say that there are no vibrations in space. There are gravitational waves, ripples in the fabric of spacetime itself, that are created by massive cosmic events like the collision of black holes. And there are electromagnetic waves, like light and radio waves, that travel through the vacuum of space at the speed of light. In fact, astronomers can use radio telescopes to listen to the universe. They can detect radio waves that are emitted by distant stars, galaxies, and nebulae. And sometimes they can convert these radio signals into sound waves that we can hear. This sonification of astronomical data can create some truly otherworldly and beautiful soundscapes. The music of the spheres that ancient philosophers dreamed of. But the physical vibrations that we call sound cannot travel through the emptiness of space. So, from the frantic dance of a vibrating molecule to the silent majesty of the cosmos, the story of sound and silence is a story of energy and perception, of physics and biology, of the world around us and the world within us. Let's pause our story for a moment and delve a little deeper into some of the fascinating applications and phenomena of sound that we encounter in our everyday lives. One of the most profound and universal applications of sound is, of course, music. What is it about a particular sequence of sounds that can make us feel so much? How can a combination of pitch, rhythm, and harmony evoke feelings of joy, sadness, excitement, and nostalgia? The science of music is a vast and complex field, but at its core, it is all about the manipulation of sound waves. A musical instrument is essentially a device for creating controlled vibrations. A guitar string, a piano hammer, a column of air in a flute, a stretched drumhead, they all vibrate at specific frequencies, producing musical notes. The pitch of a musical note is determined by its fundamental frequency. But most musical sounds are not just a single, pure frequency. They are a complex mixture of the fundamental frequency and a series of higher frequencies called overtones or harmonics. The specific combination and relative intensity of these overtones is what gives a musical instrument its unique timbre or tone color. This is why a middle C played on a piano sounds different from a middle C played on a violin, even though they have the same fundamental frequency. Harmony in music is the combination of different notes played at the same time. Some combinations of notes sound pleasant and consonant, while others sound tense and dissonant. The principles of harmony are based on the mathematical relationships between the frequencies of the notes. Simple integer ratios between frequencies, like 2:1 an octave or 3:2 a perfect fifth, tend to sound consonant to our ears. Rhythm is the pattern of sounds and silences in time. It is the pulse, the heartbeat of the music. Our brains are incredibly good at detecting and responding to rhythmic patterns. A strong, steady beat can make us want to tap our feet, clap our hands, or get up and dance. The emotional power of music is still something of a scientific mystery, but it seems to be related to the way that our brains process the complex patterns of sound in music. Music can activate the reward centers in our brain, releasing dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation. It can also trigger memories and associations, transporting us back to a specific time and place in our lives, from the simple lullaby that soothes a baby to sleep to the complex symphony that can move a concert hall full of people to tears. Music is a testament to the profound and mysterious power of sound. Another fascinating area where sound plays a crucial role is in the animal kingdom. We've already mentioned how elephants use infrasound to communicate over long distances, and how bats and dolphins use ultrasound for echolocation. But the world of animal communication is filled with an incredible diversity of sounds. Birds are some of the most accomplished musicians in the animal world. They use a complex repertoire of calls and songs to attract mates, defend their territories, and warn of predators. The song of a bird is not just a random collection of notes. It has a specific structure, a syntax, that is learned and passed down from one generation to the next. Whales, the giants of the deep, produce some of the most complex and haunting sounds in the animal kingdom. Humpback whales are famous for their long, elaborate songs, which can last for up to 30 minutes and can be heard for hundreds of miles. The songs are constantly evolving, with new phrases and themes being added over time. Insects also have a surprisingly sophisticated world of sound communication. Crickets and grasshoppers produce their chirping sounds by rubbing their wings or legs together, a process called stridulation. They use these sounds to attract mates and to establish their territories. Even fish, which we often think of as silent creatures, can produce a variety of sounds. They can grunt, groan, and click by vibrating their swim bladders or grinding their teeth. The study of animal sounds, a field called bioacoustics, is providing us with new insights into the behavior, ecology, and evolution of animals. By listening to the sounds of the natural world, we can learn about the health of an ecosystem, the diversity of species, and the ways in which animals are adapting to a changing planet. Now, let's turn our attention to a more technological application of sound. Ultrasound imaging. We've already talked about how bats and dolphins use ultrasound for echolocation. Humans have borrowed this same principle to create a powerful medical diagnostic tool. An ultrasound machine uses a transducer to send high-frequency sound waves, typically between 2 and 18 megahertz, into the body. These sound waves travel through the body and are reflected back when they hit a boundary between different types of tissue, like the boundary between fluid and soft tissue, or between soft tissue and bone. The transducer detects these returning echoes, and a computer uses the information to create a real-time image of the inside of the body. The computer measures the time it takes for the echoes to return and their intensity to determine the location, size, shape, and texture of the organs and tissues. Ultrasound imaging is a safe, non-invasive, and relatively inexpensive way to visualize the body's internal structures. It is commonly used to monitor the development of a fetus during pregnancy, to examine the heart, blood vessels, and abdominal organs, and to guide needles for biopsies and other procedures. The same principle of using sound waves to see is also used in sonar sound navigation and ranging. Sonar is used by ships and submarines to map the ocean floor, to locate underwater objects like shipwrecks and schools of fish, and to detect other vessels. And now, let's talk about a very interesting and common phenomenon related to sound. Waves, the Doppler effect. You've almost certainly experienced the Doppler effect, even if you didn't know its name. Imagine you're standing on the side of a road and an ambulance with its siren blaring is approaching you. As the ambulance gets closer, the pitch of the siren seems to get higher. As it passes you and moves away, the pitch of the siren seems to get lower. This change in the perceived frequency of a wave, due to the relative motion between the source of the wave and the observer, is called the Doppler effect. It's named after the Austrian physicist Christian Doppler, who first proposed it in 1842. Here's what's happening. As the ambulance is moving towards you, it is catching up to the sound waves that it is emitting. This causes the sound waves in front of the ambulance to get bunched up or compressed. The distance between the wave crests, the wavelength decreases, which means the frequency of the waves reaching your ear increases. And as we know, a higher frequency means a higher pitch. As the ambulance moves away from you, it is outrunning the sound waves that it is emitting. This causes the sound waves behind the ambulance to get stretched out. The wavelength increases, which means the frequency of the waves reaching your ear decreases. And a lower frequency means a lower pitch. The Doppler effect doesn't just apply to sound waves, it also applies to light waves. When a star or galaxy is moving away from us, the light that it emits is shifted to longer wavelengths towards the red end of the spectrum. This is called redshift. By measuring the redshift of distant galaxies, astronomers can determine how fast they are moving away from us, which provides evidence for the expansion of the universe. The Doppler effect has many practical applications. Police use Doppler radar guns to measure the speed of cars. Meteorologists use Doppler radar to track storms and predict the weather. Doctors use Doppler ultrasound to measure the speed of blood flow in the body. So, the next time you hear the siren of a passing emergency vehicle, listen for that characteristic change in pitch. You'll be hearing a direct, audible demonstration of one of the fundamental principles of wave physics. But our story of sound is not all about beautiful music and fascinating science. There is also a darker side to sound: noise pollution. Noise pollution is the presence of unwanted or disturbing sound that has a harmful effect on human health and the environment. In our modern, industrialized world, we are constantly bombarded with noise: the roar of traffic, the rumble of construction, the whine of machinery, the blare of music from a neighbor's apartment. While a single loud noise can cause immediate damage to our hearing, it is the chronic, long-term exposure to lower levels of noise that can have more insidious effects. Noise pollution has been linked to a wide range of health problems, including hearing loss, tinnitus, a persistent ringing in the ears, sleep disturbances, stress, anxiety, high blood pressure, and an increased risk of heart disease. Noise can also have a negative impact on our cognitive performance. It can make it difficult to concentrate, to learn, and to communicate. The environment is also affected by noise pollution. The noise from human activities can disrupt the behavior of animals, interfering with their communication, their ability to find food, and their ability to detect predators. There are many things we can do to reduce noise pollution, both as individuals and as a society. We can use quieter appliances and vehicles. We can install sound-absorbing materials in our homes and workplaces. and we can support policies that promote quieter communities. Taking the time to seek out moments of quiet in our noisy world is not just a luxury, it is essential for our physical and mental well-being. As we near the end of our journey, let's reflect on the incredible scope of our story. We started with a simple vibration, a tiny disturbance in the air. We followed that vibration as it transformed into a wave of energy, traveling through different mediums at different speeds. We saw how it could be reflected, refracted, and diffracted. We journeyed deep inside the human ear, marveling at the intricate biological machinery that converts that wave of energy into an electrical signal. We followed that signal into the brain, where it was finally transformed into the rich and meaningful experience of sound. We explored the world of music, the language of animals, the technological wonders of ultrasound and sonar. We even ventured into the profound silence of space. The science of sound is a story that is all around us, all the time. It is in the gentle whisper of the wind and the roar of a jet engine. It is in the laughter of a child and the symphony of a great orchestra. It is in the silence between the notes and the quiet contemplation of our own thoughts. The next time you stop and listen, I hope you will hear the world with new ears. I hope you will hear the intricate dance of molecules, the complex symphony of frequencies, the incredible journey of a simple vibration that becomes the soundtrack of our lives. For in the end, the story of sound and silence is the story of connection. It is the story of how we are connected to the world around us, to each other, and to the very fabric of the universe itself. And that, my friends, is a story worth listening to. And so, our exploration of sound waves and silence, the science of sound, has taken us on a grand tour of the auditory world. We have journeyed from the most fundamental principles of physics to the most intricate workings of human biology and psychology. We have seen how sound shapes our world, our culture, our health, and our very perception of reality. But before we conclude our story, let's take one last look at the vast and varied landscape of sound, and perhaps ponder some of the deeper questions that it raises. Let us consider, for a moment, the sheer power of sound. We have talked about the decibel scale and the immense energy carried by loud sounds, but the power of sound can be harnessed in some truly remarkable and sometimes destructive ways. Sonic booms, for example, are a dramatic demonstration of the power of sound waves. When an aircraft travels faster than the speed of sound, it creates a shock wave, a cone-shaped disturbance in the air. When this shock wave passes over an observer on the ground, it is heard as a loud, explosive boom. The pressure change associated with a sonic boom can be strong enough to shatter windows and cause other structural damage. In the realm of technology, high-intensity focused ultrasound HIFU is a medical procedure that uses powerful, focused sound waves to heat and destroy diseased tissue, such as cancerous tumors. It is a non-invasive alternative to surgery that is showing great promise in the treatment of a variety of conditions. On a more destructive note, sonic weapons are a type of non-lethal weapon that use sound to incapacitate or deter people. These devices can produce extremely loud and disorienting sounds that can cause pain, dizziness, and nausea. While they are intended to be less harmful than traditional weapons, there are concerns about their potential for causing long-term hearing damage and other health problems. And then there is the fascinating and somewhat mysterious phenomenon of sonoluminescence is the emission of short bursts of light from imploding bubbles in a liquid when they are excited by sound. The exact mechanism behind sonoluminescence is still not fully understood, but the temperatures and pressures inside the collapsing bubbles are thought to reach extreme levels, similar to those found on the surface of the sun. It is a striking example of how sound energy can be concentrated and converted into another form of energy. Now, let's turn our attention to the more subtle and subjective aspects of sound. We have talked about how our brains interpret sound, but the way we perceive and react to sound is also deeply influenced by our personal experiences, our cultural background, and our emotional state. A sound that is pleasant and soothing to one person may be annoying and distracting to another. The sound of a particular piece of music may evoke happy memories for one person and sad memories for another. The study of how humans perceive sound, a field called psychoacoustics, explores the complex relationship between the physical properties of sound and our subjective experience of it. Psychoacoustics has important applications in many areas, including the design of audio systems, the development of hearing aids, and the creation of more pleasant and effective warning signals. One of the most interesting concepts in psychology is the idea of auditory scene analysis. Our brains are constantly performing a remarkable feat of unmixing the complex mixture of sounds that reaches our ears. When you are in a crowded room, for example, your brain is able to separate the voice of the person you are talking to from the background noise of other conversations, the clatter of dishes, and the music playing in the background. This is often referred to as the cocktail party effect. Our brains use a variety of cues to perform this auditory scene analysis, including the direction of the sound, the pitch and timbre of the different sound sources, and the temporal patterns of the sounds. It is a process that is still not fully understood, but it is a testament to the incredible processing power of the human brain. And what about the future of sound? As technology continues to advance, we are likely to see new and exciting developments in the way we create, manipulate, and experience sound. Spatial audio, for example, is an emerging technology that aims to create a more immersive and realistic listening experience. By using advanced signal processing techniques, spatial audio systems can create the illusion that sounds are coming from specific locations in three-dimensional space, just as they would in the real world. This technology has the potential to revolutionize the way we experience movies, video games, and virtual reality. In the field of medicine, researchers are exploring new ways to use sound for diagnosis and therapy. Acoustic biosensors are being developed that can detect the presence of specific molecules or cells by measuring changes in the properties of sound waves. An ultrasound-mediated drug delivery is a technique that uses focused ultrasound to temporarily open up the blood-brain barrier, allowing therapeutic drugs to reach the brain. Even our understanding of the fundamental nature of sound may continue to evolve. While the classical wave theory of sound provides an excellent description of our everyday experiences, at the quantum level, the picture becomes more complex. Phonons are the quantum mechanical equivalent of sound waves. They are quantized units of vibrational energy that travel through a crystal lattice. The study of phonons is important for understanding the thermal and electrical properties of materials. So, as our story draws to a close, we are left with a profound sense of awe and wonder at the world of sound. It is a world that is both simple and complex, both physical and psychological, both familiar and mysterious. From the first cry of a newborn baby to the final, fading echo of a distant melody, sound is an integral part of the human experience. It is the medium through which we communicate, the art form that moves our souls, the science that reveals the secrets of the universe. So, I invite you once again to do what you did at the beginning of our story. Stop for a moment, close your eyes, and listen. Listen to the symphony of the world around you, the grand crescendo of life, with its moments of soaring beauty, its periods of quiet contemplation, and its occasional jarring dissonances. Listen with a newfound appreciation for the incredible journey that each sound takes to reach you, for the intricate dance of molecules, the elegant mechanics of your ears, and the profound magic of your brain. And in the moments of silence, listen to the sounds within, the steady rhythm of your own heart, the gentle whisper of your breath, the quiet hum of your own consciousness. For in the end, the science of sound is not just about waves and vibrations. It is about us. It is about what it means to be alive, to be aware, to be connected. And that is a sound worth savoring, a silence worth cherishing, a story worth remembering. Thank you for listening.